Picture this, you're hopping onto the Pokemon Showdown game with your favorite Pokemon, Roaring Moon. Your opponent leads Spidops. That's a funny lead. They must be trying to set up with webs, right? Might as well set up a Dragon Dance before sweeping. Wrong. Spidops clicks First Impression, killing Roaring Moon in one hit. You ask for a rematch, this time knowing you can easily switch into Golden Go with a Quad Resist to the First Impression. Wrong again. Spidops this time hits a Stakeout boosted knockoff, Oko and Golden Go. What do both of these examples have in common? They're both cherry-picked examples of Spidops being my favorite Generation 9 bug type. Now how good are bug types actually? Let's take a look. In previous videos, I had ranked the dual types for both Ice and Steel types defensively. I will be ranking bugs this time. However, I will not be relying solely on the base point totals to rank them. Instead, I will use personal judgment with the meta defensive scores as well as the base scores. Using both a basic point sum algorithm and something a little bit more in depth, a basic hierarchy of defensive types is created. I've also significantly improved the meta defensive score since last time, so those scores should line up a little bit better. Now where bug comes in is a little awkward. It is weak to common offensive types, fire, flying, and rock, but it has key resistances in ground, grass, and fighting. Resisting two of the types Steel is weak to is actually a major benefit. In fact, it should be no surprise that Steel Bug is going to be top of the list. The real question is where everything else falls. Without further ado, let's get started. Unsurprisingly, coming in last place we have Bug Ice. I've already gone into some detail as to why this type is bad in my previous video, but to summarize, having 2 to 4 times weaknesses is debilitating. On top of that, it only has 3 total resistances and a quad weakness to Stealth Rocks, making it particularly difficult to get on the field and remain healthy. Next up, we have the type combination for Bug and Grass. This type combination has a lot more detrimental weaknesses, including 2 quad weaknesses to Fire and Flying. However, the fact it has niche resistances to Fighting, Water, Electric, and a quad resistance to Ground is the only reason it's not dead last behind Ice Bug. In fact, Pokemon like Parasect have had niche uses specifically against strong legendaries like Kyogre with its ability to absorb any of its water attacks via Dry Skin. That being said, it is still weak to 6 types total, including the 2 quad weaknesses. Right after Bug Grass, we have Bug Psychic. This is another example of a type that isn't inherently bad. It does boast a quad resistance to fighting and a 2 times resist to ground. But that's really where the defensive benefits stop. It's still weak to 6 total types, including all of Bug's original weaknesses, and adding in weaknesses to Dark and Ghost. As for Pokemon with this typing, only recently have we had any examples. Both evolution lines are actually really solid defensive stat-wise though. Orbeetle has seen some use in Generation 8 as its Dynamax form allowed it to set Gravity. Although using your powerful Dynamax trigger to set Gravity was still not very good because Orbeetle wasn't threatening otherwise. Rabsca is another interesting case as it has a little bit of offensive potential, but also being able to use the move Revival Blessing and revive a teammate at 50% health is a huge boon. That, along with the fact it can usually survive a strong hit, can make it a strong option for defensive tails. If Trick Room were more commonplace in singles or VGC, this Pokemon could really shine, especially in restricted formats. A surprise to me at number 15, we have Bug Fighting. Considering the solid performance of a certain bug fighting Pokemon, I would have thought this might end up ranking a little bit higher, but its weaknesses to Fire, Fairy, and a 4 times to Flying can make it hard for this type to perform well. It maintains its fighting resistance while also resisting Dark and Ground. Defensively, this type is really similar to Bug Dark, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. There are a couple Pokemon with bug fighting typing. Buzzwole is a prime example of a min-max defensive bug fighting. High defense and HP allow it to tank multiple hits from physical attackers, especially those inclined to use Earthquake or close combat. It does struggle on the special side with only 53 special defense. Any Dazzling Gleam, Moonblast, Heat Wave, etc. can take it out pretty easily. We also have Mega Heracross, which is more of an Omni tank plus physical attacker in this role. Unfortunately, its middling speed means a strong choice or boosted super effective attack can still take it out pretty easily. Also worth mentioning is Slitherwing, who's got semi-respectable defenses. The first combination on our list with no representatives, we have Bug and Dragon. If we ever got a Mega Flygon, I believe it should have been this typing. Unlucky. This typing adds together the defensive benefits of both types to make a really solid defensive type. Unfortunately for Bug and Dragon, having 5 weaknesses total is a bit of a detriment, though this is slightly circumvented by some key resistances like the addition of water and electric. I hope someday we can see a Mega Flygon-esque Pokemon with this typing, because that could be really cool. In 13th, we have Bug Flying. Technically speaking, this combination has a +1 defensive score, but its 4 times rock weakness is really dragging this type down. However, since both of these types pair so well with steel, it makes sense that quad resisting fighting and being immune to ground could in theory help this typing see quite a bit of use. This does come at the drawback of being quad weak to stealth rocks. Butterflies, moths, and beetles comprise this combination. Scyther, after the introduction of Eviolite, truly makes this type shine defensively. With Eviolite, it effectively has over 600 base stats, and can use Swords Dance Roost to boost damage or keep healthy. Unfortunately, this required setup keeps it from being a menace in VGC, and its quad stealth rock weakness forces it to run heavy-duty boots in singles. Mega Pinsir, on the other hand, has an incredible 120 defense and 90 special defense, allowing it to survive a multitude of hits. It really shines with its high speed, attack, and access to the broken Aerialate ability which Mega Salamence has so incredulously abused in the past. Without skipping a beat, let's start talking about Bug Rock. This type combination is a little interesting because you might think combining 2 of arguably the worst typings in the game would make this type bottom 3 at most. But synergistically, these 2 types work exceedingly well together. While they may not boast more than 2 resistances, only having 3 weaknesses, with one of them being the uncommon Steel type, ensures there are many opportunities for a Pokemon with this typing to stay on the field. Not to mention, Pokemon with this typing are also very well designed thematically. Armaldo, Crustle, Cleaver, and even Shuckle all have opportunities to shine. Shuckle has the best defensive stats out of any single Pokemon, but it also has an HP of 20. Not to mention, this thing can't hit anything for damage. It mostly exists to set hazards. Funnily enough, Shuckle has the highest potential damage via swapping its offensive and defensive stats, but I'm sure most of you have already seen those calculations. Close to Bug Rock, we have Bug Dark. I almost wanted to place this below Bug Rock, given that there are 5 weaknesses here, but in spirit of respecting the algorithm, I couldn't do it. This type is incredibly interesting to me because it has a ton of potential. While it's still weak to a few common offensive types, resisting Ground, Ghost, Dark, and being immune to Psychic is extremely solid. There haven't been many Pokemon to make use of this unique typing, but Lokix, another Gen 9 bug type, has actually seen some use in Showdown UU and OU as a revenge killer and offensive threat. Lokix is actually quite similar to Spidops, but Spidops being the more defensive variant without the dark typing. The fun damage calculation I mentioned in the beginning about Spidops' first impression is actually fulfilled better by Lokix because the dark typing gives it stab knockoffs. But that's enough about offense, let's move on to the next type. As mentioned in the beginning, Bug has a very unique set of defensive qualities. When fine-tuning my meta defensive score analysis, Bug initially was getting slightly under negative, which led me to add capabilities to reward niches a little more heavily. Bug resists fighting and ground, which both have 5 super effective matchups, the most possible super effective matchups, while also being both super effective against steel. Bug is second only to flying in how well it pairs counterpart to steel. Due to its piss-poor offensive capabilities, however, it ends up not seeing much usage. As for Pokemon that are a pure bug type, many are simply early game bugs that aren't noteworthy. I mentioned Spidops in the beginning, but outside of very specific niches, it's kind of bad. Excelgor also has a few niches as a pure bug too, but mostly benefits from its extremely fast speed and supportive capabilities. Also, without any real competitive contenders, Bug Ground boasts exactly 1 Pokemon. Resisting fighting ground and nullifying electric are very solid defensive capabilities. Also, several of the initial weaknesses are traded between the two to make a unique defensive profile. Being weak to flying, water, ice, and fire isn't great, but in current metagames, elemental types aren't always present, so this can be managed. Now, Nincada is no defensive powerhouse, but it is currently the only bug ground Pokemon, so I thought I'd give it a shout out here. At number 8, we have Bug Fairy. Normally you'd see Fairy pairing well with other types, but here it is only okay. Having 5 total weaknesses is really what's killing this dual typing. In double battles, the chances of a Pokemon having at least one super effective move against a Pokemon with 5 weaknesses is nearly guaranteed. This typing retains a 4x resist to fighting, but also keeps Bug's normal ground resist. Dark and Dragon are solid types Fairy brings as resistances as well. As for weaknesses, the addition of Poison and Steel isn't great, but those aren't great offensively already, and the resistances are much needed. There has only been one Bug Fairy so far, Ribombee. Ribombee isn't really defensive, with 60-60-70 defensive stats. It will die to most things. However, the defensive typing is decent enough that it can survive most regular, non-super effective hits, and where Ribombee really shines is with its supportive utility. Shield Dust protects its team against Fake Out, and access to a fast Tailwind helps it tremendously in VGC. For singles, it has access to Quiver Dance, which can run rampant with a nasty, boosted Moonblast. In my other ranking videos, Normal always seems to do somewhat decently in the rankings. Here is no different. Somehow, Bug Normal makes it all the way to number 7. There are no current Pokemon with this typing, but that doesn't mean one with this typing won't have a niche someday. Defensively, this has the same weaknesses as Bug standalone, but it trades Normal's weakness to fighting for an immunity to Ghost, which is a pretty decent upgrade. Strong defensive Normal types could definitely benefit from this typing in certain circumstances. Just outside of the top 5, Bug Ghost stands at slot number 6 with some key resistances and immunities. It resists the same standard types, but adds immunities to Normal and Fighting, which is always solid. Gaining Ghost and Dark weaknesses isn't great, but overall it has potential to have a niche defensively. In fact, Shedinja, the only Ghost Bug Pokemon, has seen niche defensive use primarily due to its ability Wonder Guard. This ability allows it to ignore all damage that isn't super effective, but at the cost of only having 1 HP. This ensures the Pokemon is essentially the definition of a defensive niche. Shedinja has been used before in VGC teams to combat common Kyogre core teams, since they don't often run fire moves to hit Shedinja, making one last type of move that it can hit it. Bug Poison is an interesting case. It retains all of Bug's normal weaknesses and adds Psychic, but Poison's resistances allow this dual typing to now resist Fairy and quad resist Fighting. This can be incredibly annoying when used on the right Pokemon. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any super defensive Pokemon with this typing, as most Bug Pokemon just simply aren't. Instead, I will talk about Mega Beedrill, who's the definition of not defensive. All of Beedrill's Mega stats went to attack and speed. What's really funny is when you compare Mega Beedrill to Calyrex Shadow, who has a similar but even greater stat spread offensively, while retaining key defensive stats. Tangent over, let's go next. At number 4, we have the Bug Waters. Water's inherent defensive typing brings several nice-to-have resistances to Bug. It cancels out the Fire weakness, and Bug cancels out Water's Grass weakness. This leaves 3 total weaknesses which aren't always super common. On top of that, most of the resistances are superb or above average outside of Steel. Both of the water bug lines are excellent defensively, though Golisopod's ability makes it kind of mid if your opponent can have its health before it moves. However, 140 base defense with 90 special defense makes it an extremely good assault vest target. If its ability can be turned off, or if it ever gets another hidden ability, this Pokemon might become something to truly fear. Araquanid also shines defensively with 92 defense and 132 special defense. Its other stats are middling, but its ability Water Bubble doubles all water damage output, making it actually a strong threat. Araquanid often acts as a web setter with moves to support its team like Wide Guard or offensive moves like Hydro Pump or Liquidation. We're now in the top 3. It's not surprising that this type is number 3. Bug Fire has 3 total weaknesses and resists 6 types. While it is quad weak to rock, they can often run heavy-duty boots in singles to do alright. While the resistances leave a little bit to be desired, the sheer number of them definitely help. Volcarona is arguably one of the best bug types in general thanks to its 550 base stat total. Its bulk is very respectable, and it has access to Quiver Dance, Fiery Dance, Struggle Bug, and Rage Powder. In VGC, it's often a supportive tank with Flame Body and Rage Powder, while in singles, it's a menacing sweeper with Quiver Dance. One of my favorite personal type combinations is Bug and Electric. Electric cancels out Bug's flying weakness, and Bug cancels Electric's ground weakness, making this combination only weak to 2 total types, Fire and Rock, while keeping 4 total resistances. This leads to it having the second highest metascore for bugs. In theory, I really like a defensive Bug Electric, but those don't really exist at the moment. Vika Volt is probably the closest you can get to one, but 77 HP, 90 defense, and 75 special defense just doesn't quite cut it for a defensive electric bug type. It has somewhat respectable bulk, but this type's lack of weaknesses is really what makes it quote-unquote bulky. I believe if we were ever to get a bulkier version of this typing, it could really shine. Last and greatest, we have Bug Steel. I've talked about this combination already in my Steel type video, but essentially this type has only one weakness. And if the opponent doesn't have a fire move, it can be incredibly difficult to remove a Bug Steel Pokemon. Scissor, Fortress, Escavalier, etc. are all incredible defensive typings that really make good use of the Bug Steel. In the spirit of not repeating too much from that video, I will instead talk about Durant here. Durant is plain and simple, not too tanky. Defensively, it's okay with 112 defense, but its HP and special defense are paper thin, so it often has trouble staying on the field outside of neutral special hits. When this Pokemon was really fun was when Durant could Dynamax, doubling its HP and then using Max Steel Spike and Max Quake to buff its defense and poor special defense respectively. Dynamax moves also couldn't miss, so having the Hustle ability and giving it a 1.5 attack boost was extra amazing. And that's the full list of bug type combinations ranked. It's always interesting to look at this type because while Bug on its own is usually seen as one of the weaker options, a lot of these combos end up being surprisingly creative and effective. From the glass cannons like Bug Ice that drop to a measly pebble, all the way up to Bug Steel with its metallic defenses, bug types really do run this full spectrum. I think what makes this type so fun to cover is that nearly every combo has at least one standout Pokemon or potential for one standout Pokemon that pushes the typing beyond what you could expect from an early game Pokemon. Anyway, that's all for now. Let me know in the comments which bug type combo you think deserves more respect or if I completely missed the mark on one of your favorites. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe.